Okay, I've never stood on a stage before and introduced my wife, which is what I'm just about to do now. Apart from the obvious accomplishment of having put up with me for 26 years, Fiona's got a very kind of eclectic work background, working in all sorts of places, including retail and working with narrowboat companies and all sorts of other organisations. That was before we formed Evolution back in 1995, and has since been working with large and small and huge businesses all over the UK. Fiona's going to talk, the NLP at Work conference is where we are today, but Fiona's going to take it that step further, which is really, really important to all of us, I guess, which is how NLP can help you with your work-life balance. So if we can welcome Fiona on the stage, that'd be great. Thanks.
Hello. You all look very different from up here. I've been looking at the back of your heads all day, so it's quite nice to stand this side now. First of all, can I say how pleased I am, how excited I am to be here today. We've been looking forward to this for a long time, and it just feels really good to be here. And I hope that you, like me, have really enjoyed listening to all the presentations, but also enjoying the beautiful view out there. It's just stunning, and now the sun's come out. See, I'm standing this side, I can see it now. You've all been looking at it all day. But what I want to do is talk to you a little bit about work-life balance. How many of you work? How many of you have got a life? Okay, it's worth asking the question, because I know so many people who decide to work for themselves, to start their own businesses, because they think it will give them a certain way of life, only to discover that all they ever do is work. And work's very important, but I just think it's important to get that balance back. So, like most of you, I've got lots of balls to juggle, constantly. When I'm at work, I am all of these roles. And I've been particularly interested today to listen to the fact that every one of the presenters seems to do multiple jobs. So I guess there's something about NLP and a low boredom threshold, but I'm not quite sure about that. I might need to test it out a bit. So I'm a director of Evolution, I'm a trainer, a coach, a counsellor, I'm responsible for marketing, I've got a degree in psychology and a research interest in stress and work-life balance, which is really why I'm standing here today. But I'm also an NLP master practitioner and an NLP coach. So there's all of that, but then like the rest of you, I've got all these other roles in life that I have to balance as well. So I'm guessing you're not all wives and mothers and sisters, but just flip to the male equivalent and just associate yourself with all of these roles that we have in life that we have to fulfill all the time, and most of them are about fulfilling somebody else's expectations of us. So quite often when we're trying to balance things, it's not about what we want. What we're trying to balance is time. And we try and distort time and stretch time and make time work for us. So when we're at work, we're thinking about when we should be at home, and we're racing around and trying to finish on time, or if anything, finish early, and then we finish early. And how many of you have experienced that guilt? I've finished everything I set myself to do today, but no one else has left, so I don't really want to be the first one to leave the office because someone will notice. Yeah? So we stretch time, and then we rush home, and we rush home with the idea of doing story and bath and bed if we've got small children, or maybe some leisure time or something else. And the reality is that for most people, work-life balance becomes a balance between paid work and unpaid work. That it's about leaving your job to go home and do all those jobs you've got at home. And really, that's not work-life balance. And that's not what work-life balance should be all about. Work-life balance is about far more than did I get the washing up done before I went to bed. Okay? If we're really taking work-life balance seriously, it's not about this current trend towards how can I spend less time at work. It's about making work fulfilling and exciting and challenging and a place that we really want to be when we're there. And then making the rest of our life somewhere we really want to be when we're there. It's about getting maximum enjoyment and maximum fulfillment out of everything that we do. Whether that's kicking back and watching Corrie, it's not guilt, it's a choice. No, I chose Corrie. I don't even watch Corrie, but you know, not listening to the Archers. That would have been a much more realistic version of my life. Don't quite know what happened then. So what I want to talk to you today about is is work-life balance. And I thought the best way to illustrate it was to tell you a little bit about my life and how I balance work and life, and how I use NLP in that mix. And I use NLP in two ways. I use it with the big stuff, and I use it with the little stuff, and I'm going to talk about both of those things. Okay? So, NLP and the big stuff. One of the things that's been mentioned today already is strategic planning. How many of you have been involved in some form of strategic planning at work? Okay, and how many of you engage in strategic planning in your lives? Okay, fantastic. And I'm really pleased to see lots of hands going up. Clearly I've had this conversation with you before. So, strategic planning is really, really important. And when we do strategic planning as a business, we make sure that we look at everything we need to plan for work in parallel with those goals and objectives and things we want to achieve in our personal life. So balance is planned in from the start. This little bit's actually stolen from 2009 when we did strategic planning, and I've just taken a little bit out of the middle and made it look a lot tidier than it did in reality, where it was scrawled on flip charts. But we had objectives that included having a standard a B2B expo, increasing our profits by 20% over the course of the year, adding new corporate clients. But we also put in there, let's buy a camper van. That's something we really want to do. Actually, we bought a van and planned in fitting the van out. It was also the year of our silver wedding anniversary, so we thought, well, let's plan a party and also a holiday. I picked this bit because it looks a lot more exciting than most of our bits do. You know, we don't do this every year, buying vans and going to the Maldives, but you know, it seemed like a nice thing to put in. But if we've planned those things that we want to get from work and those things we want to get from our home life right from the start, there's a better chance of getting everything we want. And it is actually possible to have everything you want. Yes, people nodding, that's lovely. Okay. So one of the things that we use when we want to get everything that we want is well-formed outcomes. Lots of people today have mentioned well-formed outcomes. If you're not familiar with the jargon, it's just goal setting, but it's goal setting plus. Because quite often when we're goal setting, we look at what we want to achieve. And one of the things that NLP does is make you also focus on the fact that every time something changes, there's a gain and a loss. So if you're going to goal set, you need to consider not only what you're going to gain, but what you're going to lose. And you need to balance the importance of that loss. Does that make sense? Okay. So we used well-formed outcomes back in 1998 when we decided we wanted to move to Cornwall. And that involved moving us, moving our children, moving our business. And that's quite a challenging move, because at the time, we were living up in Cheshire. Martin and I both grew up in Northwich, in the middle of Cheshire, and it looks like this. It looks like that as well. I thought I'd put both of those in. And this is where we wanted to move from, and this is where we wanted to move to. So the gain is a bit of a no-brainer, isn't it? You can kind of see instantly. Lots of you live in Cornwall, and I'm sure that you live in Cornwall for a reason, because you absolutely love living here. Okay, but we had to balance that against the fact that most of our family was in Cornwall, was in Cheshire. That's a 300-mile drive just to see Mum, and that's quite a loss. And we had to balance all of those things when we were making that change. But the other thing that NLP made us do was, once we'd made the decision that, yeah, on balance we still want that, how do we make it work for us? How do we make it a really bright, vital goal that we're working towards? How do we keep that goal alive until we've achieved it? Well, we did that by that picture that I chose there, which is of Trevornant's Cove, and we live in St Agnes, was actually the one that was a postcard on the kitchen cupboards in our old house, so that every time we went into the kitchen, you know, when you're tired and you're going to make a cup of tea and you're wondering why you're working so hard, bam, that's why I'm working so hard, that's what I want. Every day, I would have conversations with myself about what life was going to be like. So I had the visual, I had the auditory. You getting the picture? Yeah. And every day I just allowed myself to imagine what it was going to feel like to live in Cornwall. And in 1999, we made the move, and we moved the business successfully, we settled the girls into school successfully, and we haven't looked back. 3 years ago, my mum gave up on this idea of us travelling 300 miles often enough and followed us, so she lives in St Agnes as well now. So, you know, that works too. So that's just one of the ways that you get the work-life balance. We did lots of goal setting around work too, But we've got work, home, sorted, moved. When we got here, having focused on the move for a long time, you start to think, that's it, this is what we've been looking at, so now everything's going to be great. And of course everything was great, mostly. So then you start thinking, what's missing? What else do I need? And one of the reasons that you need something quite often is because you've got some limiting belief going on. So this model here is called belief systems. It's a belief systems loop. I use it all the time at work. When I'm coaching people, when I'm training, let's look at how people form their view of the world. How do they form the beliefs that they've got? How does that translate into their values, their judgments about the world? And how does that translate into their behaviour and therefore the results they get? So I'm going to come back, if I may, to Tony's presentation earlier when he was saying that the interventions don't work at the start of a doctor's training. One of the reasons is they've got a belief that their learning strategy is successful. So that affects their behaviour. They do what they've always done. And in the past, they've always got the results they wanted. So why would they change anything? Why would they want to listen to Tony tell them there's a better way to learn when the way they've got works for them? It's only when something happens and the result is different, so they fail for the first time, that they're open to hearing some challenge on their beliefs. So we all of us grow up with a whole host of beliefs. Everything that's in our mind comes from our upbringing, our education, the media, our experiences in the world, and we all come equipped with a full set of beliefs about how the world is. Well, one of the beliefs I had was I came from a family that believed in hard work. That one works for me. I came from a family that was fairly simple in its approach. Working class family, the values are roof over your head, fire in the grate, meal on the table, don't need anything else. Everything else is fluff. Okay, this is what we work for. So that is fantastic when you're providing all those things, but it leaves a bit of a gap. I came from a family that never did any outdoor pursuit type stuff at all. Adventure, what for? Life's adventure enough just getting through the week. So we didn't do any of that stuff. So I had a belief about myself that I just wasn't the sort of person who did that. Other people did. I was slightly in awe of them. That's great, not me. It's not what I do. And that was always fine. That got me the results I wanted. Life ticked along happily. Until after we moved to Cornwall, Martin started surfing and kayaking and doing lots of other things. And I spent a lot of weekends sitting on my own going, now what? Now, the really easy thing to do would be to make his life difficult. And moan a lot and generally say, spend time with me. It's not my style to do that. So I challenged some of my beliefs and some of my self-limiting beliefs and thought, what if I was a person who did those things? So I bought one of these beauties. I absolutely love my kayak. It's fantastic. I just changed a belief and thought, maybe I am the sort of person who does some of these things. And I got the results I wanted, which was that I got to spend more time out having fun instead of sitting twiddling my thumbs or deciding that working at the weekend was a really good idea, because it's really not. But is that enough? I challenged it once, bought a kayak, went out kayaking. Is that enough to change my life? So I went back to that limiting belief and thought, what else? And realised I actually had a propensity to say no to too many things. I'm busy. I'm too busy, got too much on, we're raising kids, I'm running a business, what more do you want from me? So I took an active decision to start saying yes. Yes. And the day I took that decision, I was having this long conversation with myself and thought, what's this going to mean? What's this going to mean in my life to say yes instead of no? At work, I already was that yes person. If you needed it, I could make it happen. I could sort anything if you wanted it. I hope I have a reputation still for being somebody who makes things happen when they're needed and for the quality of that when it happens. But at home, I had a tendency to opt out rather than opt in. Well, the universe is a funny old place, isn't it? And you have to be very careful what you wish for sometimes. The very day after I made that decision, I phoned my friend Joy and said, hey, what are you up to? And she said, I'm just looking at this really interesting brochure. Want to go to China? So what did I say? I said yes. So we went to China and we did a trek on the Great Wall, and it was like, oh, apparently I'm the sort of person who does this as well. Fantastic. I quite like this adventure stuff. Who knew? All those years of thinking, yeah, that's not for me. So then I thought, getting a bit of a taste for this, want to do something bigger, because it's in me to do that. But I also have to work, I also have to run the business. By this stage, I should point out that we haven't got 5-year-olds, we've got kids who are leaving school and need us significantly less. So I thought, there's this really big walk that I've been hearing about, that I'm really interested in, called the Camino de Santiago. Anybody heard of it? Okay, so I said yes to China and decided that what I also needed to do was say yes to the Camino de Santiago. So that's me at the end, outside the cathedral in Santiago de Compostela. At the end of 500 miles across northern Spain. When you have to look, I'm clearly a natural athlete. You can tell this just looking at me, can't you? So when I told people I was doing this, they looked at me like I'd suddenly grown an extra head. I mean, it's insane. Who walks 500 miles? Me. So I just thought this was really interesting, because at times I felt like I was standing back and looking at myself as if I was someone else. But you can create that someone else for yourself and still be congruent with all your values if you just challenge them occasionally. But actually walking 500 miles, it wasn't enough just to say yes. I needed a little bit of help too. And NLP helped me there with some anchoring. We've heard lots about anchoring today. And who'd heard of anchoring before they came here today? And who hadn't? Okay. Those of you who'd never heard of it, I can guarantee you've done it. Unconsciously, naturally, you have set anchors throughout your lives. How many of you have got a piece of music, for example, that really triggers a whole intense set of emotions and memories and takes you back to some other place, good or bad? Yeah, that's a natural anchor. Yeah, because it was played at that time, it's formed it, and when you hear it, it takes you right back there. So I set myself all sorts of anchors. I did some training as well, I didn't just set anchors. But I set myself all sorts of anchors to get myself in the right place for doing this walk. I boosted confidence and some beliefs in myself, and that really made a difference. But I also, because this photograph is the end, had to think about the beginning of the walk. Who knows who they are? Who knows why they're there? Anybody know why they're there? Yeah. That's why. That's okay. See, I know that's cheesy. I know that that's really bad taste music. But I know whenever I hear it, I am incredibly happy. Because it reminds me that I did that 500-mile walk, and that's my anchor. And if I ever feel like I can't do something, I just have to listen to that, and I'm right there thinking, I can do anything. And that I take into work as well. So when I've got a work project and I'm thinking, eek, I said yes, when perhaps I should have said no. Listen to a little bit of the Proclaimers. Who knew? The Proclaimers can make you do anything. Now, you need to understand about anchors. What's an anchor for me might not be an anchor for you. I have a friend who absolutely hates, loathes and detests the Proclaimers. So that's really not going to happen for her. If she hears Proclaimers, and I'm looking at Nikki's face over here and thinking she's not a fan either, she listens to what? Now, I appreciate, you have to understand that's all my credibility gone this morning, admitting to that. But I stood in the Spanish Gate in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, listening to the birds at 6 o'clock in the morning, complete silence, no one else around, looking at the stunning view. The sun had just come up, the mist was just lifting off the hills. So what do you do to complete that moment is you blast out the Proclaimers at full blast on your iPod and start walking. And I'm being a bit trivial because I'm telling you about my life, but this applies to anything that you want to do. Anything that you want to do, if you can set yourself an anchor and draw on what you've done before, it will help you no end. So I also use NLP for the little things. Okay, because not every day in my life is about going to China or walking 500 miles. I do actually do some work in between these episodes. But NLP in the little things is where it really comes into its own. It's the NLP in the small, the mundane, the everyday that makes life worth living. Okay, so building rapport. Lots of people have talked about rapport today. Building rapport is just making that connection with people and making it quickly. And we do it easily with people who we're comfortable with, people who are like us. But it's a bit harder with some people. We encounter difficult people. Andy was describing his consultant this morning. It takes a little bit more effort to build rapport with people like that. But life's so easy when you can just make a connection and get on. And NLP teaches you how to do that. Now, the other thing that I want to mention that nobody's said so far, we've talked all day about NLP being a set of tools and techniques, and it absolutely is. But behind those tools and techniques is also a philosophy. There's a way of being with NLP. It's kind of a set of beliefs. It's sort of the 14 commandments almost, if you like. Now, I'm not going to talk about all 14 of them, but I do want to introduce you to 2. Because they make a difference in my life every day, and they all do, but I just don't want to bore you, really. The first one is, the map is not the territory. Do you recognise that map?